really nice to be here in Germany on YouTube. We'd like to do something off our first album now. Take it, Diddy.
It's a combination of things. One, I think we were a little ahead of our times, and a little over people's heads, at the time. Everybody was really scared of us. Basically, we were just so original, so different. What we did was, we tried to bring back the original feel of rock and roll.
Hey, oh, let's go! Hey, oh, let's go! Hey, oh, let's go! Hey, oh, let's go!
The genre has gotten very strange by that point. The songs were like 6 minutes long with lots of solos and sort of virtuosity, which at first was great when it was practiced by Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton and people like that, had really 6 years on gotten where you had sixth generation Led Zeppelin copy bands and stuff like that doing superfluous solos, guitar solos, drum solos. It just got too messy. So we wanted to strip that down to its elements, along with the vicious, violent guitar playing, my sort of flowing, pulsating drumming, and Joey's sort of a British infected pop nasal vocals, sort of, gave it a certain atmosphere.
I don't know, they hit a certain chord to people. It's amazing. I mean, they say things to people. They're talking to people with their songs and the way these songs are written and their attitudes, what they're talking about, they're kind of connected very deeply. Even today, it's amazing. I mean, they're bigger than ever. I mean, people just connect with them. It's amazing.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
I guess what makes them unique, identifiable, is the tempo, that really quick, straight ahead tempo, with kind of like the real heavy sounding guitars, but with the pop edge.
I'm not sure who said it, but somebody said, a critic said, that punk existed because of the false assumption that the Ramones could be imitated. That's why people continue to try and to try. The Ramones style of music is 100% punk.
Yeah.
Basically, the Ramones were an idea I had, not the name Ramones, but I'd seen the New York Dolls.
All the girls been losing. All the babies, it don't seem like cops as great as it once used to be. I know I'm good, and so you just better be better. When you get yourself out on that floor, you better have yourself together, 'cause that's when there's gonna be a showdown.
I saw how exciting they were, despite the fact that they weren't really virtuoso musicians. The idea hit me that I knew these great kids from Queens that I thought would make a great band because they were so unusual. They were so colorful and different and so very much into rock and roll. But they were kind of afraid to put a band together because they weren't particularly virtuoso musicians. So I thought, wait a minute, these guys would make a great band. So I got in touch with Johnny, and we talked about it, and we got together, and we put the first Ramones together, which was a trio. And to my surprise, right away they were coming up with very innovative songs. Very early on, I realized that what we had here was really unique, revolutionary, and something that could have a profound impact on future music.
Tom and I were friends I knew him from junior high school and high school. He was always into music, and he approached me and said, why don't you pick up bass and play bass? And I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And so he kind of taught me how to play bass. And then we formed several groups together over the years. Later on, somebody approached me to open up a rehearsal and recording studio on 20th Street downtown here. And I brought Tommy in, so we designed it and built it and managed it. It's called Performance Studios on 20th Street, not far from the old Max's Kansas City. And we each had our own, since we built it and managed, we had time for our own projects. I had my bands I was working with, and Tommy had his projects. And one of his projects happened to be the Ramones. He was just actually producing them at the time. He wasn't in the group at all.
I was originally their manager. It was a trio, and Joey was playing drums, and Johnny was guitar, Dee Dee bass. Later on, I realized that Joey was the best singer, so we decided to make him the lead singer. And we brought in, we tried some drummers, and they didn't get what we wanted. I was trying to explain to them what we wanted, and basically they didn't get it because they were playing the style, which was kind of heavy metal drumming with lots of tom-toms and bashing and stuff like that. And so I would show them what we wanted, and eventually the guy said, why don't you play drums? And so even though I'd never played drums before in my life, at least I knew what was needed. Just for fun, I decided to try playing drums. And it worked out, it clicked. As soon as I started playing drums, the sound sort of gelled. And we went on from there. And so, yes, I was fortunate enough to be an outsider and an insider. So I certainly saw the full potential of the Ramones. And so I was very excited about that whole thing.
What kind of love? What kind of love? What the right light does ever? What kind of lose?
And eventually they started playing around the area, and they said, well, come on, do the sound for us. And so I started helping them out, just doing sound and shopping some equipment for them. And eventually, the bigger they got, the more people I hired, and I didn't have to schlep. And then we hired a sound man, and so I kind of moved up, up the chain, the food chain.
One of the things that made us good was that we were genuine. It wasn't so much an act as these basically outcast guys who were getting a chance to be to have their dreams come true and play rock and roll on stage. I thought Johnny Ramone was a brilliant guitarist for what he was doing. I mean, he came up with an original, unique style of guitar playing. He knew what he was good at and perfected it to the ultimate degree. So as far as punk rock guitar is concerned, he was the best.
John was a great guy. He was very down to earth. He had politics that were right wing of Attila the Hun, really. He was the most unpunk person you could ever meet.
I think he was a genius. A genius, to me, by definition, is somebody who invents his profession. I think somebody does something the way that nobody else has done it before. And that is very, very different from being a technically accomplished musician. I had this discussion with John a couple of times. I told him that I felt the Ramones were way better artists than musicians. To him, that was too artsy-fartsy an statement, you know. To him, thinking of being an artist was meaningless, inconsequential, you know. He didn't care to think about it at all.
Well, for what he's developed in his style, yes. I mean, he developed that just basic punk rock raw guitar of no downstrumming. Nobody was doing it at the time. You know, most people play like this. He was just going down, 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 down. He developed the whole thing just to fit the Ramones style.
It's difficult. The downstrumming technique is difficult to reproduce for most guitar players because they play both up and down, and it's easier to play up and down than just down. Johnny liked to play down because he got a good tone out of his guitar. He really loved Led Zeppelin's Communication Breakdown. That riff, that, you know, the original opening riff of it, which is played with downstrokes. So he found out that that's how that's played, and he said, well, that sounds great, so he decided to play that. Now, it's very hard, especially at the speed that the Ramones played, to play like that.
It became important because that's the way John did it. The Ramones created a style, like a lot of artists do. While at the beginning they were trying to do something else. I think that some artists are trying to do things applying knowledge or theory or experience, and sometimes that's not enough. And what really works is when they finally create music, the music that they can't help but they have to create because it's what they have inside.
First of all, I thought that he was very original looking, and that combined with the fact that he had a very kind of a colorful, mellifluous, you know, it was pleasant sounding voice, you know, and nice, deep, rich, and he was just so unique looking. I remember the first time I ever met him when he was a young kid, you know, and he was just so striking looking and so different. And I thought this would be an interesting looking front man, because he was so different from the usual lead singer front person. And so I thought it would be a nice colorful touch to a colorful band.
I mean, there was nobody like him. He was completely unique. I mean, just looking at him, he was a unique character, sure. Of course it developed. I mean, we're talking about, 20 years. In the beginning, I don't know if you ever saw any of the early footage of them. It was it was kind of ridiculous, I mean, they had to develop. They had to develop their personalities on stage. It took a while, a couple of years.
First of all, the Ramones loved pop music, like I said. But Joey especially had an innate ability and love to create incredible pop songs. He just, it's interesting how he started writing songs. He was given a guitar that only had 2 strings on it. And he realized that if he tuned the strings in fifths, that by pressing just on them, he could come up, just basically play like a 1-string instrument. And immediately started writing songs. And he was coming up, I think the first song he wrote was I Don't Care, which was a basic rewriting of the Alice Cooper I'm 18. But he went from there to, I think one of his earliest, next song might have been, certainly one of his early songs was Beat on the Brat, whose melodic and chord changes on it are so brilliant and unique that he was already a virtuoso songwriter by about his second song.
Well, it's kind of like the Beatles. Like, you had McCartney and Lennon. Like, Joey was more of a romantic, more ballad type of things, although he wrote up punk rock stuff too, but Dee Dee was more punk rock, heavier punk rock, so you had like the Lennon-McCartney aspect of the group there.
Dee Dee was a bit isolationist, I think is probably the best word. He was a bit separate sometimes because he was in his own space. I mean, as I said earlier, the thing about when we did a gig at Brixton Academy, he said to me, "How was it tonight?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Were we fast enough?" I said, "Of course you were." And he said, "Because I don't know what else I could do. If I had to put on a CV, I'm a punk rocker, that wouldn't qualify for a job selling newspapers on the Brooklyn Bridge." And I was stunned that he'd thought that far from actually leaving the band and doing something else.
He just couldn't stop. I mean, he just was doing stuff all the time. But he's like intense. He was an intense person. Whatever he did, it was intense. Writing, he was intense. Taking drugs, it was intense. He had to do too much of that. He'd write all the time. He'd just, he's all off the road. He started painting. He's a very intense character.
Well, he was a very. It was amazing that Dee Dee could play a musical instrument at all, because he was so. I mean, he was so hyper and just so. Like seemed to have attention deficit disorder, like I say, and the fact that he could master the instrument was amazing, and of course this gave him a totally unique style and a unique way. I'm not actually sure if he knew what actual notes he was playing. I mean, I knew other musicians like that too. They sort of play by instinct rather than by actual knowledge of the scales or anything like that. They basically do it in their own way. It's sort of organic, and he was definitely like that. He had his own way of figuring these things out.
Unfortunately, he had problems. Mental problems. He had multiple personalities, and unfortunately, his personality that kind of brought him down took over too much. If you read his books are like very depressing, and everybody's against poor Dee Dee, and it wasn't like that. It's all in his mind basically, and he just couldn't handle it, what was going on. It's unfortunate. Dee Dee and I lived in Queens, so we'd drop everybody off here in Manhattan, and I'd take a lot of rides with him, and so I developed a good relationship with him, and try to, you know, get into his head, but it was, oh, forget it. It was one of his many heads, I should say. It was very difficult, very difficult.
Oh, you're alive now, baby. You better shut it up.
Most bands, bass players were never up front. Bass players were not usually the focus of the band, you know. But the Ramones were kind of like the Beatles, where you had like, you know, where the Beatles, you know, you had people that loved Paul or people that loved John, you know what I mean? It was like that. And with the Ramones, it was the same thing. It was like everybody identified with somebody different in the band, you know. Joey tended to be, all the girl fans loved Joey. Some, I guess Johnny too. But most of like the hardcore punk kids, like the real punks, all loved Dee Dee. I mean, if you went to a show, you could see all the girls in the audience were in front of Johnny and Joey, and then all the skinheads and mohawks and all the punks were all in front of Dee Dee. You could see it if you went to the show. It was blatantly obvious.
At that time, back in the early 70s, there were a few places for not top 40 cover bands to play, you know. There was a Mercer Art Center. That place fell down. Unfortunately, Max's Kansas City, it closed up. And CB's kind of happened by chance. He wanted to open up a blues, country blues, bluegrass. That was country, bluegrass, and blues. That's what CBGB's means. And it was, this area at the time was like the Bowery. It was a lot of bums, and now it's like ridiculous. It's like Yuppieville now. But back then it was like raw. It was like raw, and it was a dumpy bar. And Hilly decided to take a chance on booking just unknown bands.
I was told about them by Terry Ork, who was the manager of television, and he suggested we put the two bands together on a Sunday. So that's how they first came here. First gig was terrible. T-E-R, yeah, terrible. Actually, it was terrible because the main reason they had terrible gear. I mean, their amps were, everything was loose, their wires and everything, and they'd start and they'd stop, and everything was squeaking and screeching, and they couldn't get through a song, and they were yelling at each other on stage. It was a comedy of errors, you might say. I remember I told them I got to get it together, and it was hard to see Joey through all that hair, but yeah, they wanted to come back, and I thought, what the heck, give them another chance. And it took quite a few gigs for them to get it together, quite a few. And I think the most important thing at the beginning is they had really a strong desire to play, and they really wanted to play very badly. I mean, they became popular after a few months, and when they played, they did very well. They did well, and we did well.
It caught the world by surprise. It caught a lot of people by surprise, and I don't think that people were thinking too much about rock and roll being dead then, but I thought it was going down slope. And just hearing what these guys were writing and how they were doing it was completely satisfying and uplifting.
It was very fast. They had very little money, but they didn't need a lot of production money, and they didn't need a lot of time. The Ramones never liked to take a lot of time recording. It was just fast, take 1, 2, 3 takes, boom, 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 and that's how it comes out. And it happens to work for the Ramones.
Well, it was minimal. We had a very low budget, very little time, and I didn't have as much chance to work on it as I would have liked, because my drums were set up at the other end of the recording studio, which is a very long, place in a totally isolated booth. And it was hard for me to get from there to the studio, and that combined with the fact that we had 12 hours to mix the whole album. So, under those circumstances, it turned out okay.
The first record was like the typical great first record from a band. All the classic bands, their first album, it was not so. It's almost as if the songs were written so long ago. They've been playing them in clubs for a long time before they ever get the record out. They know them down, no problem. They get into the studio and it comes off as sounding very live because they're so familiar with it, and it's part of their, it's an extension of themselves almost. So the first record, awesome, song for song, side for side. You could put it against any other classic record and it measures up.
Hey, little girl, I wanna be your boyfriend. Sweet little girl, I wanna be your boyfriend. I see you love me, baby. What do you do? I see you want me, baby. But what can I say? Oh, oh, oh.
There's a great story about somebody from the record label coming down to the studio and asking Johnny how it's going on the first day. It's like midday on the first day, and apparently the band had showed up 3 hours early, and he asks Johnny how it's going, and Johnny's like, it's not too good, we've only got 7 songs down so far. And whether or not there's anything apocryphal to that, and there's a work ethic that the Ramones were like, this is all we need, we know how to play these songs. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, get in, do them, get the tracks out, get out. People heard that Ramones album and they fell into one of 2 camps. They either thought it was the thing they'd been waiting for all their lives, or they thought it was the biggest pile of crap they'd ever heard. And there aren't many records that have that kind of have that kind of impact historically. You could say that the same happened with the British punk bands a year later, but it happened first with the Ramones. And for that reason, if for no other reason, really one of the most important albums ever made.
Hey, little girl, I wanna be your boyfriend.
We'd start doing festivals in Europe, which was great, and bigger venues in Europe, and so we were very big in England and Europe, bigger than the States. So it was always a pleasure to go over there because we were well treated, and bigger venues. It was great.
We booked loads of UK tours because they were exploding. It was like the era of punk. All these gigs were created from nowhere. Everybody who had a back room of a pub would put a gig on because kids wanted to go out and see live music for the first time in ages. They were much bigger in Europe than they were in America. I remember the first time I went to CBGB's and I walked in the gig and I said, so where's the gig? and I was actually standing in it. It was like the bar. I thought there was another room with a gig in it, but it was like this shithole with nothing. It was extraordinary. So they were pleased to come to Europe and play bigger gigs than they were used to playing. It took off very quickly.
Since it's a smaller country, news spreads faster, and the combination of the media coverage and just the word spreading made, and plus also the fact of coming from overseas also puts a spotlight on it. And there was just more interest there.
Well, I think it was a little more open in Europe and England at the time, that they were, the BBC or the radio stations would play new music without any problems. There was the old Grey Whistle Test. All those programs would get people on, and the kids enjoyed it. And so here in the States, there was corporate radio. You couldn't get on unless you had a hit single, and everything they were playing was like top 40, and they kind of ignored the Ramones. Especially what happened was the Sex Pistols came into the picture after the Ramones started, and then they kind of perverted the name punk rock, and we got lumped into punk rock. So everybody says, oh, the Ramones, they're another Sex Pistols. We don't want them up at the station. They'll throw up, they'll spit, they'll do something crazy, they're nuts, they're dangerous. So we got lumped into the whole English sound of the Sex Pistols. But we actually, it was unfortunate, and the radio station just wouldn't play us. It wouldn't play us.
Leave Home was a sort of a change-up. What we were going for on Leave Home was a sort of a pop sound, because we liked pop music, and I guess we were in that kind of mood for that album. Also, we started working with Tony Bon Jovi, who was co-producer for the record, and we felt that he was good with that. So that, combined with our natural love of pop music, that's sort of our pop album. So you get these psychotic songs with psychotic lyrics, with these happy-go-lucky pop melodies, and so that's basically the Leave Home album.
When I'm going out west where I belong, where the days are short and the nights are long, and I walk and I walk and I twist and I twist and I shimmy and I shimmy.
Leave Home is like Ramones Part 2, and they actually wrote pretty much all the songs at the same time, or over the same period, which is 74, 75 into 76, when they were getting a live show together. The first Ramones album is under 30 minutes long. That's another thing to its credit. And the second Ramones album, I think, pushes it over 30 minutes by a few seconds, as if it's some big artistic statement. But the songs are really part of the same package. They're a continuation. These days, those two albums combined would still not fill up a CD. Most people feel kind of compelled to make hour-long debut records these days. So that they were really putting out two very fast records back to back. The sound is better on Leave Home. There's some of the songs are better songs, more longer-lasting songs. But I think the way most people see it is great continuation of the first record with something of a better sound to it.
it's a fun and great album. We spent a little more time producing it and making it. We had a lot higher budget. We worked in a nice, comfortable studio. It was a nice, homey studio with good equipment, and so that was a lot of fun making that record. Very much so. The Ramones were very fortunate in having 4 very talented songwriters. You know, each of them were coming up with some great songs. You know, the first album, a lot of the songs were written individually or in partnerships, and then later on we all started writing together, and that especially happened on Rocket to Russia.
Personally, Rocket to Russia is my favourite Ramones album. I think the songs are just unbeatable, start to finish, and the production is also, like, you know, about the best it ever was. There's always that fine line for any group where you're progressing. You know that you want to sound better, and you can go too far. And also at the same time, you may be writing great songs. You know you're peaking, and you want to get them out really quickly. The Ramones, everything coalesced on that record.
1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, and on the road. 4, 5, 6, 7, on the street is going to heaven. There's no stopping in between from out the hood. You gotta keep a bit that ball, I have to do it out. 3, 2, jump a wild between that gap. People stop to the street and hop road. 3, 2.
Rocket to Russia was our peak in every way, in songwriting, in playing, performance, recording, production. Well, you know, it was a well-made album. The following album, Road to Ruin, was even better in production, again because of higher budgets and stuff like that. But Rocket to Russia, all around, is a great album.
When everyone's had about the bad, the wild with 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 the wild, what don't you know about the bird? Everybody knows the wild with the wild with the wild with the wild with the
There's a cover version on Rocket to Russia. They do this song Surfing Bird that was recorded by the Trashmen back in the early 60s, I think. And there's something I remember about Surfing Bird. Years ago, back in England in the 70s, Kenny Everett, the DJ, used to have this item on his radio show on Capital Radio, which was the worst record of all time. And it was like, I guess, a listener competition to try and choose the worst record of all time. And he ended up bringing out an album. I clearly remember he brought out this album. And I equally clearly remember that the original of Surfing Bird by the Trashmen was chosen as the worst record of all time. And I think if you want to kind of talk about why the Ramones needed to come along and you know, impact the way that they did, you know, they came along on their third album, they covered that same song, and they do it in their own inimitable style. It's the perfect song for them to do, because it is, in a way, the extreme surfing song. It's surfing taken to this garage rock extreme. It's absolutely hands down brilliant. And you know, the fact that people were in the 70s hearing these old garage rock classics that were made by teenagers that were crazy songs and saying somehow there was something wrong with them. I don't think the Ramones knew a thing about Kenny Everett doing this, but I think that they made their own statement. They came and they didn't just pick up on Let's Dance or Do You Wanna Dance, these kind of songs that they covered. They also covered this crazy surf rock song and made it just as crazy in their own style. I think it was these statements were really, really important to claim back this primeval rock and roll and say there's nothing wrong with it. This is as good as anything that's come along. It's just something that's stuck with me over the years about that particular song on that particular record.
You know, when I decided that I didn't want to tour anymore, you know, Marky was our first choice. He was basically the only choice. We knew him, you know, from the scene. I had actually had known Marky for many years, and so we brought him in, and it worked great. He was very enthusiastic, and basically he combined his style with my style, and what we did at that point was shift gears. The Ramones were becoming more of a professional band, so Marky was perfect to come in at that point because you know, they could shift gears and do the different things, and you know, so at that point it was a time for a change anyway. So it you know, kind of worked out perfectly.
Mark, the drummer, he was just happy to be there, you know. Being the Ramones drummer is a hard bloody job. You had to drum really fast for a long period of time. But the early shows were only 35, 40 minutes. I can't remember how many songs they did, but it's hell of a lot of songs.
Mark came in at a good time period, and Tommy at that point had agreed to stay on because he's the one who did put everything together as far as the look and the sound and everything else. He recognized all the different players. So for him to okay Marky coming in was a big thing. So he basically taught Mark the style, that drumming style, because Mark played in a heavy metal band. He played in a heavy metal band called Dust, and he was much more of a technical drummer than Tommy was, whereas Tommy was just kind of just a feel, you know. What
made the Ramones so great, you know, their high-strung energy and their sort of strange behavior created some great songs, but it also made it very hard to be with them round the clock for someone like me, and so it sort of like was disorienting, and I was starting to lose touch with reality because their reality isn't the average reality, and so I was starting to forget what reality was. So I thought it would be best for everybody if I was able to stay on as producer and help them write songs.
Well, losing Tommy was a bit of a shock, even though we kind of knew that that he wasn't that happy with the way things were turning out. I think besides the personal reasons that Tommy had, and this is probably, it is a speculation from my part, one thing that bothered Tommy, who had been very much, if not the leader, the advisor to everything, the consigliere type. I think that the fact that the Ramones' recording career did not get the level of success that was expected, that reflected on Tommy. And since Tommy was the one that had been laying down his strategy and was the man with the theory and behind the action, I think that that made him the fall guy.
Rock, 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 rock on house.
Ramones are peculiar. They're ugly people.
It happened just after I left. Rock and Roll High School was made, but they started discussing Rock and Roll High School about a month or two after I left. Originally it was supposed to be about disco music or something, and somebody came up, decided to make it about punk rock, and so the Ramones were approached at that point.
It was interesting seeing how a movie's made, you know, being involved in a movie and seeing how, you know, things are filmed and going on sets and working with actors and directors and stuff like that. It's great. Johnny didn't like doing very much unless it was fast, boom, boom, boom. The problem with movies is you got to sit around a lot until they set up the scene, and then they do the scene, and then they set in another scene, and you're sitting around. There's a lot of sitting around, so he was kind of frustrated. But he enjoyed it. He's a movie buff, and he liked being around the movie business and stuff. I enjoyed it. I was in the movie too, you know.
Oh, that was such a wonderful album to work on, you know, because I had all the time to produce. Okay, I was working with Ed Stasium, and it was just I felt like a kid in a toy store. I had full reins and everything, and we used wonderful studios, and it was great working with Mark. You know, we set up the drums and got a great drum sound, you know, and the sound on that album is magnificent. You know, we created a lot of like original sounds that were later copied by basically hard rock bands, and you know, later on. That album was very influential in its sound and production techniques, and I'm very proud of Road to Ruin.
We'd like to do a little tearjerker that was written for us by Sonny Bono. This one's called Needles and Pins. It was a face I loved, and I knew I had to run away, yeah, and get down on my knees and pray, yeah, that they'd go where the still begins up. Needles and pins up.
First of all, the sound on the instruments are great, but we also did on that record we do some overdubbing also. You know, we were trying to make a more commercial, radio-friendly record at the time, because they weren't accepting the great albums we were making before. So we were trying to, maybe if we met them halfway, we felt then they might play us on the radio. So we were going for more of a radio-friendly thing also. We're doing some overdubs on that, and there's some really nice overdubs and some production work on some of the songs. Phil Spector was a huge Ramones fan. He saw us, and he gave us the great compliment of saying that we were the first band he's seen since the Rolling Stones that excited him. So yeah, he very much wanted to work with the Ramones. I'm not quite sure he knew what he was up against. You know, because the Ramones were so strange to work with to begin with, and from what I hear, he's a little bit strange himself. So it's like the combination is wow.
Wanted to be more successful record-wise. They would have liked to have been in the charts with hit singles, with hit out. All bands, that's what all bands aspire to. I mean, they had a hit with Baby I Love You, but it wasn't really them. It was a Phil Spector cover version. We did Top of the Pops, and the orchestra were there from the BBC. I mean, that's not what the Ramones were about.
I think it could have been great, But I think that Phil was just, well, I don't know exactly what makes him tick. I don't know exactly, you know, how this guy went about making all the hit records that he did, you know, before the end of the century. But it was just crazy to the way he was doing and what he was doing, you know, working with the Ramones. It was insane.
The record company just figured, you know, Phil was a big name. They'd attach his name to the Ramones. It'd help get them on the radio, maybe get them, you know, break the top 3 or something. But what they hadn't taken into account was that Phil had never worked with a band like the Ramones before, never worked with anybody with the sound, and realistically hadn't done anything great in quite a while. His name didn't really carry as much weight as it had when he was doing the Ronettes and the rest of what he did. So what ended up happening was the studio was a nightmare. They didn't get along with Phil. He just killed the whole creative process in the studio, just overwhelmed them, pulled guns on them, threatened them, kicked Monty out, made Monty cry. The whole situation just turned out really bad. The album ended up being a whole lot of Phil Spector and not a lot of Ramones. And that was the beginning of a cycle of the band using producers who were not accustomed to working with bands like the Ramones, and in fact had no idea of what the Ramones were about or what their sound was about. And from that record on, from End of the Century on, it was just one bad situation after another.
She went away for the heart of it. Stations going to edit, but she never got back. She never got back. She never got back. They sang it. She went away for the heart of it. Stations going to edit, but she never got back. She never got back. She never got back. They sang it. The gay took my baby away. They took her away from me. The gay took my baby away. They took her away from me.
What the Ramones went through with Phil Spector would have broken a lot of bands up. Every Ramones album seemed to be saved by a couple of songs. That one's got the KKK took my baby away. And yeah, on any number of levels that works. A, mention the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, talk about taboo lyrics. So A, they've got that on it. B, which I didn't know at the time, and I'm sure a lot of listeners didn't, it kind of historically came out that was Joey writing about Johnny the Nazi. Johnny's certainly the Republican, but he's taking this a step further, and he's basically saying Johnny, the real right-wing Republican, has taken my baby away.
The girlfriend thing, that's what happened, you know. And they'd talk. It wasn't like they never said anything to each other. They had to communicate, but it's, you know, like in a van, they wouldn't talk to each other. I talked to Johnny, Johnny talked to Marky, Marky talked to Joey, Joey talked to Marky. Just Joey wouldn't talk directly to Johnny because he didn't want to talk to him.
It was noticeable, yeah, definitely. They'd sit at either ends of the bus. It used to be a bit cold between them, definitely. Yeah, you were aware of it.
When the albums were reviewed, Rolling Stone, I think, always gave them a minimum of 3 stars to all the albums. That's amazing, you know, the consistency of the quality. I think, I can't recall them getting less, so that's possible. I remember how consistent those records were.
He always had the battle with the drugs, and he just, at the time he left, we were helping in a way, kind of structuring him, you know, because the Ramones are very structured. People think it's just like, you know, nothing's there, but it's a very structured group, you know. down to the songs are this way and this and the way they look and when they move around on stage. It's all structured out. And at the time, I mean, Dee Dee's a brilliant songwriter. I mean, the early Dee Dee years was incredible. So he was just flaking out. He just didn't want any more structure, and he wanted to do his own thing.
His mental stage had deteriorated so much that it was dragging the band, and you know, when you have to tour all the time, you have to be together all the time, and you know, the band continued to travel in a van. The crews got tour buses, but they didn't. So they had to be with each other, and it just became harder and harder to tolerate, you know, Dee Dee's behavior. When he finally decides to quit, we don't believe him. We think he's gonna come back, but when we realize it's final, then of course Johnny, as usual, took care of the situation and says, fine, we'll just find somebody else. You know, we'll find a younger Dee Dee.
I got a phone call from a friend of mine who was playing in a band with another guy who was in a band with Joey's brother. So it was kind of like a friend of a friend of a friend. He called me up and he said the Ramones are auditioning bass players. And I was like, oh wow. It's like, wow, that's kind of cool. Now, I was in the Marine Corps at the time. So he was like, you should go down. And I was like, I haven't played my bass in almost 2 years. I'm like, you know, what am I going to go down for? He said, just go down, just go check it out, you know? So I thought about it. I was like, yeah, it'd be kind of cool to go down and meet them and tell everybody, yeah, I went and jammed with the Ramones. So I figured, what the hell? So I dusted my bass off and I jumped in my truck and I drove into Manhattan, right down here at 25th Street and between 10th and 11th, SIR Studios. They didn't really talk to me much. He just asked if I knew any songs, and I said, yeah, you know, I know a couple songs. So we did I Want to Be Sedated. We stopped and he asked me a couple questions, and then we started to play again, and Joey walked in as we were playing, and I was like, wow, you know, that's wild. I'm in the room with the Ramones right now. A couple days later, I got a phone call. My mom said, the guy from the Ramones called you. I go, I'm thinking to myself, I must have left something at the studio, because I did not think that they'd be calling me to come back. So I called Monty back, and he was like, learn a couple more songs and come back. And I was like, all right. So I got a phone call a couple days later to come back again, and now I'm like, wow, 3 times, you know. So I learned a couple more songs. I go back. Now this time when I go back, there's a couple more people hanging out in the room. Arturo Vega was there, a couple of the roadies. So now they're starting to like show me to certain people, you know, what do you think of this guy? Well, that was my impression. At this point now, I'm a deserter from the Marine Corps because I haven't gone back. So now I'm a deserter. So at that audition, you know, I start to realize, like, I might have a shot at this, you know. So the next time I go back, we play live speed, we play a couple more songs, and now I go home, and now they start talking about touring, that they have a tour of South America booked, and would I be available, and this and that. So now I realize I got to get this discharge straightened out with the Marines. So I go home, and I was waiting on a discharge when I left the Marines. I wasn't in the I wasn't with my company anymore. I was in a holding platoon where you wait as you're being processed out. And so I call up, and the guy says, yeah, I'll call you back. And 15 minutes later, the cops come to my door, arrest me. I spent the night in jail at the local precinct, and then the next morning a bounty hunter picked me up and took me to Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn. And I spent the afternoon there, and then 2 Marines picked me up and drove me to the Naval Brig in Philadelphia. I spent 2 or 3 days there, and then 2 Marines picked me up and took me down to Quantico, Virginia. So I get to Quantico, and I get to the movement center and get signed in and everything, and they put us in the holding area. And I'm there my first evening, and the phone corporal comes out and goes, Ward, you got a phone call. So I'm thinking it's my parents. I'm like, Mom, my mother's going to be bawling, you know. So I pick up the phone, and Chris. I go, yeah, it's Johnny Ramone. I go, hey, Johnny, I go, I'm sorry, you know, I should have told you guys. I said, I thought I could get it worked out. He was like, well, what are they saying? I was like, I'm going to be here for, you know, a month to 2 months, but I'm going to get discharged. And that's it, I'll be done. He said, well, just do your time. Don't get in any trouble. When you get out, you got a job. And I almost fell. I was like, holy shit. So here I am in jail finding out that I'm going to be playing with the Ramones, you know. So I was like, you know, they shaved my head again. He was like, don't worry, we'll get you a Beatles wig, you know.
When CJ came in as bass player, it gave them a new injection, really, of youth. It made them all wake up a bit. I think they've probably become a bit set in their ways, and he was young and up for it, and it woke everybody up and gave them a kick up the arse, I think. There was always something wrong with Joey, and I think I was kept away from a lot of it, really. You know, he couldn't walk into a lift without going in, coming out, going out. He had OCD or something. Like, there was this example in Spain when he didn't know when to cross the road. He kept walking off the curb, walking back on, walking off. In the end, a car hit him. But he was struggling against himself to do something. You knew there was something wrong, but I never really knew what it was. There was definitely a problem.
The OCD didn't affect his creative abilities at all. It didn't affect his performance at all, or anything like that. It basically was a handicap as far as everything else was concerned. You know, daily routines and you know, people have to do repetitive things. You know, it affects their lives quite a lot. But fortunately, as far as I know, it didn't affect his performance or any of the creative endeavors that he was involved in.
Me personally, what made it easy for me to put up with it or tolerate it, I didn't even have to put up with it. I accepted it. I think that is the word. When he lived here, for a while, for instance, I did try to make him do things like more or less normal, you know, to clean after himself, to be orderly. And but I was never like a disciplinarian type. I never was. So I never had any real problem with it. I think I ended up accepting it more than trying to correct it. But accepting it became a good way of correcting it. And but I don't think Joey had any problem with it.
You know, the Ramones were what made the Ramones great was their sort of basic eccentricities and uniqueness, combined with unfortunate emotional distress they might have brought with them and everything. And so they came with problems, you know, and these problems helped them come up with the great songs. I mean, the songs are mostly biographical or based on true events to a large extent. And so they led very emotionally charged lives, and some you know, so had hard lives, you know, and certainly fueled their creative abilities and the songs and their performances.
I've got their poster at home, the farewell tour, the Ramones in Ramstein. They told me that was it. They're going to come and do it. And I thought, fair play. I tried persuading them that we could go out 2 weeks every year, like reform, just specifically to do something that was worthwhile. And they said, no, we don't want to know. We're going to just call it a day, put it to bed, that's it. Because I thought they were joking to an extent. I thought they're bound to want some money next year. And then I'd phone up with other offers and nothing would ever happen. Nobody would ever return the call. So it all kind of just ribbled away, really.
between the record and doing Lollapalooza, it was just not a very good way of going out. You know, for us to do our last tour on, you know, being, you know, outshined by all these huge platinum seller bands and you know, playing in the middle of nowhere because Metallica's tour a couple months after that was ending. We couldn't go to any major markets because they were going to be coming through in a couple of months, so we got stuck playing out in the middle of nowhere. And it was just, I guess because I was a fan, I felt that they were in a lot of ways disrespecting themselves by making that their retirement tour. I mean, in retrospect, it was good because I think they finally grasped on that tour how much of an influence they really had on the biggest bands of that time period. You know, on the biggest bands of the 90s. Everybody, Soundgarden, Metallica, Rancid, they all came around and thanked Johnny and Joey and, you know, and told them what big fans they were. So, for that it was good that they got to. But, you know, there should have been a proper retirement tour with just the Ramones, or, you know, they should have, you know, got somebody else to come out with us, and we could have done the shows that we always did in the same places that we always did, you know, and finish up with 7 nights at CBGB's or something like that, a proper Ramones tour. But instead, we did our last show in LA with Eddie Vedder, the guys from Soundgarden, Lemmy, all these big stars coming up on stage, and, you know, and they were thinking about, well, it'll help us sell more videos, and blah, 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 and this and that. And by that, at that point, I mean, everything was just strictly about, you know, making the last couple of dollars that they possibly could. And I was thinking more of, you know, what's going to be the best thing for the fans? What are the fans going to like the most? You know what I mean? And like I said, I thought 7 nights at CBGB's would have been perfect. You know what I mean? 7 sold out nights. But it just didn't go that way.
I mean, my joke is, now I tell, is if the Ramones were this big now, this big when I was working for them as they are now, after they retired in '96, I would have gotten a raise.
I'm proud to have been part of it. I mean, I think it was fantastic to have been involved with one of the best bands ever and to have known them personally as individuals, to like them, hung around with them, gone to dinner with them, talked to them and known them. I'm proud to have done that. I don't look upon that as a job. I look upon it as I'm grateful that I was there, really.
They were trying to do something that would bring rock and roll back to its roots. And they redefined completely, not only the music, but yes, the style of the kind of people, the character, the personalities of what it took, of what was real, of what a rock and roll star should be, a rock and roll musician. You know, if you happen to be a star, well, that's something else. But they totally rewrote the book, not only on the music, but on the personalities, yes.